Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday talk within the Nine-Sided Circle. I am your host, Noor Kyle,
And I am her faithful sidekick, Mushtaq Ali.
and we would like to welcome you today. Thank you if you're joining us once again, our familiar comrades, or if you're someone new joining us on the replay on YouTube, welcome, welcome. Quick YouTube spiel. I'll try to be quick about it. Thank you for supporting us by watching, first of all, and for participating. But other ways you can support us too are subscribing to our YouTube channel, liking this video if you found it entertaining or enlightening or, at least worth the watch, right? We love those thumbs up. And we also appreciate when you leave us comments. Maybe you ask us questions. Maybe we get to chime in with you, or other people get to respond to your comment or question. Teamwork, right? But those things go a long way to help us keep the ball rolling. We've been slowly and steadily, organically growing, and we just came up on an interesting, we got another 100 mark recently, so that's cool. And of course, we have a whole bunch of links in the description that you might find useful. You can check us out on Facebook. I think we have a Blue Sky account now.
Yes, we do. We
We're
haven't
still
said a
figuring
single
out
thing
how to
on it
use
yet,
it.
but
You
we
can
will
leave
do
that
it.
up to me. We'll figure it out. Instagram, of course. You can join our Facebook group. That's the main way that we're staying in touch with people currently, but also our email list. So if you haven't joined that yet, I strongly recommend you do so, as we are trying to diversify our connection portfolio in these crazy times, especially in America here where we live. We don't need to recap that for you. You probably know what's going on already. But this is how we stay together. We stay in touch. Otherwise, if you'd like to hang out with us for a one-on-one, you can send us an email, and that's a way that we can work with you on a direct one-to-one basis, or perhaps two-on-one if you want to have from time to time insights from both of us. We can
Yeah,
support
we will
you.
gang up on you.
Affectionately gang up on you to support you in doing the work. It is so much easier doing this with others rather than alone. So that's the least we can do. All right, without further ado, let's get started.
Why not? What are we talking about tonight?
Oh my God, we're talking about fate and destiny. And I feel like from time to time we get comments about this with people either culturally bound up with all these ideas of fate that they feel trapped by, and we want to give you some hope in that regard. We have some ideas. I mean, not necessarily just our own ideas, but there is a history and a tradition of finding ways to talk about fate and destiny in ways that are empowering. And we would love to do that this evening.
Yeah, and it's important.
Yeah. Oh, what did we title this one? What is the title?
I don't even remember.
We won't
Something
believe it.
hopefully not too dumb.
Yeah.
But what we're going to talk about, Gurdjieff introduced this idea uh, kind of early on. And this, if you look through Beelzebub's tales, he talks about I forget if he used catastrophe or disaster, and it doesn't matter because it's sort of the same thing. This event that happened not according to law, as he says, by which human beings may live together more or less comfortably only as masters and slaves. And he went on to explain how at this time humanity split into these two streams, these two rivers, the greater of which was entirely passive and mechanical, and the lesser of which was active and intentional. He says that today everybody is born into the stream of passivity, but that doesn't mean that you can't jump from one stream to the other, even though such a transition may be very difficult. It's interesting because as you read this, if you're me, you're asking yourself, where is the hidden third force in this? The active force and the passive force are explicit, but the reconciling force is not.
Yeah, he doesn't even
Doesn't even
mention it.
mention it in this.
Yeah,
And yet, you know that it has to be there. And so we're going to touch on that a little bit.
that's good. Because actually, someone asked me this week, how do I understand this third force? So maybe we can use this discussion to tangentially address that a little bit
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Gurdjieff said, and I agree with him on this, human beings are third force blind. They don't usually have the capability of uh, experiencing the third force as a reality, of perceiving it. They just see the yes and the no, and they don't see the maybe. So here we are, and we talk about fate and destiny. Now, I want to get literal on this and break down these two words. Fate comes from the Latin. Um, it is from the uh, neutral past participle of fari in Latin, which means to speak. And it means to speak, to tell, to say. Uh, and we understand it as things spoken by the gods. So that which is ordained. In old English, there's a word weird, which is where we get our weird. But the weird is that which has been ordained for you. Now, destiny, and this is why we use these two particular splits, comes from the Latin as well. And it is that which is destined, which makes no sense. It's a kind of a circular thing. But from the Latin, it comes from the root of to make firm, to establish. So there's a difference between something that is done from the outside and something that is done from the inside. So faith is external, predetermined, premeditated, and entirely mechanical. Destiny is intentional, conscious, purposeful, and moving towards higher states of being. For the most part. I mean, I suppose you could choose a destiny that takes you into lower states of being, but that would be weird.
Yes. Um, you mentioned the word weird,
Yes.
and I was explaining in the chat that when you were speaking earlier about the word weird, as in WIRD, right?
Yeah,
Like
or
a spoken thing.
WYRD, depending on which language you're taking it from.
Yeah, so now we're using the word weird in the context of choosing a destiny that kind of creates down spirals rather than up
Yeah.
spirals. I just wanted to distinguish what I meant in the chat. So, yes, that would be a weird choice. Perhaps people do that. Depends on how we want to look at it, right? But,
Yeah. Sometimes, sometimes they try.
yep. Oh, so,
Now,
apologies for
here's the
interrupting. We can move
thing.
on.
Here's the thing. Everybody has a fate. Your fate is determined by what we've been talking about as type A impressions. Your fate is determined by external forces laid on you and the choices that you make around those external forces early on. and it's entirely mechanical. We don't notice this because we have been trained or have trained ourselves to avoid looking at it. For most people, one of the most painful things you can do is objectively evaluate your life from early on and go, where is this taking me? And be honest about it. Very hard to do, very painful to do in most cases. And it requires more effort than a lot of people are willing to put into to change that. Does that make sense? Everybody's staring at me.
So let's talk about some examples of fate. What, like what constitutes fate. I think we'll see some echoes of what we talked about last week when we talked about A influences, genetics, the culture that you're born into, your family's economic circumstances, your, let's say your talents, right?
Yeah.
Things like that.
Ian has a thought.
Yes.
Well, I actually want to throw a couple of words into this and see um, how they relate and whether you want to use them in talking about this. The first one, the first one is, sorry.
Let's see.
In addition to fate, Gurdjieff talks about the law of accident.
Yes.
It clearly applies to the case of fate. And the second one is in Beelzebub, he talks extensively about self-calming in a very derogatory way.
What was
As he
that word?
should. Self-calming.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, accident plays completely into the idea of fate. And we talked about those and talked about accident in the last two or three talks. Uh, and it's important to understand that fate comes out of accident.
which which I find interesting because fate sort of implies something that's predetermined, but accident sort of says, oh, well, it can chaotically go off anywhere at
Yeah.
any
In
moment.
this case, the accident is oftentimes an accident of birth.
Mhm.
But what here we have to get into the idea of karma. The karma is a Sanskrit word, and all it means is action. It doesn't mean anything other than that. We put all of these other meanings on it, but it means action. And karma talks about the consequences of an action. And the consequences of an action tend to be mechanical. And so accident plays a big uh, part in this because very few of us stop to ask ourselves, what are the consequences of this action that I am intending to take? Can you imagine what an interesting planet we would live on if people took the time to consider that on a regular basis? What are the consequences of this action or that action? And do I want those consequences in my life? But we don't think about that, so it happens by accident.
It's kind of like an advanced future pacing to be able to
Yeah.
do that.
And even uh, during the mechanical uh, living out of one's fate, accident will play into it, but it will always play into it in a mechanical way that keeps you along that same line in most cases, unless you happen to find the Book of Secrets in a cave somewhere and read it and become awakened in that moment. Then you can move from fate to destiny. And so accident can help with that. Does that make sense, or am I rambling too much?
Does anyone need any clarifications? Don't be afraid to ask. You know,
Oh,
if
be
you have
afraid to ask.
specific
Be
things.
totally afraid to ask because I might ramble more.
All right. Well, James feels like he has the
And
idea.
the question is, does Ian feel like I've made any sense at all?
Yeah,
This
he's the one
question.
who asked the question.
Oh, I think this is something I'm going to be thinking about for years.
Good. As you figure stuff out, let us know, man. 'Cause we're still working on it too.
One of this is going to be kind of trivial, but one of the things I have thought about over the years is that sometimes very small decisions about whether or not I choose, and this is all in relation to girlfriends, um, small decisions I've made regarding girlfriends have in some ways really changed who I've known over the years. Um, like somehow I've got together with a particular girl, and it's really enlarged my circle of friends. Um, uh, I don't know that there's a whole lot more to say about it than that. I mean, it's in a small way, it's a variation of the butterfly effect. uh, but
Yeah, and it is a little bit like the butterfly effect. I mean, I can speak from my own experience of the first time that I really considered this. I was still living in the town that I grew up in, and I had an opportunity to examine my life to that date and to look around at the people I was surrounded with, not just my peers, but their elders, and look at what they were doing and how they were living their lives, and realizing that if I stayed in that place, that would be my fate too. Get a job in the oil fields or at the diatomaceous earth plant or a couple of other places around where I grew up and lived my life out doing that. I packed up the next day and moved 300 miles away and have hardly been back since, and changed my fate by doing that. Smartest thing I ever did.
Yeah.
And that was
Similarly,
almost by accidents. Yeah, you did the same thing, Noor.
I did. That's why I moved to California from where I grew up in Massachusetts, because I knew I needed to create a shift. Otherwise, I could see exactly how it was going to play out just by looking at my parents. And as much as I loved them, I knew that wasn't the path I wanted to just take on and wear for myself. It just didn't fit right. So I packed up two suitcases, planned a date, and let everyone know that's what I was going to do. People tried to talk me out of it, and I was determined to leave.
Osama, talk to us.
Fascinating. This even just what you guys just said about the making the decision to pack up and just leave. Um, and also making that decision consciously or thinking about the consequence of that action. In the case of, let's say, the examples that you guys just shared, and I can relate
Sure you
to
can,
that,
yeah.
the the action, the consequence of the action of staying. Like the thought goes into the staying rather than what is gonna unfold after the move. Like that is the accidental in that, or the unknown in that, um, or the mystery in that. But yeah, it's interesting that the action itself, which is leaving, it's not th it's not thinking about what's gonna happen when I leave, but rather it's the opposite of the action. The consequences of the opposite of that action. So that's kind of interesting.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, for some people, they're going to have that same conversation with themselves about, wow, I know if I leave like I always leave, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to lose the connections I've built. I'm going to have to start my job search all over again. I'm going to have to figure out a new place to live. And I'm used to doing that. I find comfort, like I live in my comfort zone when I do that. I'm speaking for the person for whom this might be true. And so for them, the challenge becomes, oh my gosh, the scary, threatening thing for me is to stay and to cultivate the relationships that I've already begun to build up and to commit to my career and settle down here. Oh my God, what if this is the moment where I do something different and lean into that? So there are so many different ways we can look at this, and there's going to be a different way that this unfolds for each person. And it's not always obvious where we are repeating the patterns that we've been creating for ourselves. So that's another part of the mystery is tripping upon an awareness of those patterns so that we can interrupt them somehow.
So, destiny, according to Gurdjieff, is consciously moving towards a higher state of being. Keyword there is consciously, intentionally. In order for that to happen, you have to realize that that's a possibility. In um, at the level of fate, it's very difficult to see that. Even if you think that you're moving towards a higher level of being, you probably aren't. And that was part of my experience that got me to pack up and move, was that I had tried to find higher levels of existence. And what I found instead was weird cultish behavior in places. And I realized that that would be as big of a trap as everything else I was doing. And there are lots and lots of groups and cults out there that will keep you cycling through the same sort of experience for your whole life. And you think that you're doing work until all of a sudden you're at the end of your life and you go, holy shit, I have wasted my time. And that happens. And that's not a lot of fun. So if you want a destiny, this requires taking action to overcome the limitations that your fate has put upon you. So, in my case, I'm the first person in my family to ever get a college education. That was not a part of our family history ever. We were a lower working class family. Uh, and that would have been my fate. I could have maybe become a house painter. Or, like I said, the oil fields were always there. And you could do a whole life. And we're talking back in the late 50s, early 60s. So you could even make a good life doing this. You get into any of these industries back then, and you could have a family on one income, buy a house, buy a car, and live good until Ronald Reagan came and took it all away. But that was not what I was interested in. You know, I had enough of the type 2, type B influences to know I can't be doing this. And so I moved. And the way to do this, in my case, was go off, be a hippie, get involved in much, much crazy shit, and learn all about self-remembering, self-effort, how to begin to shape our destiny and not simply be a puppet of my fate, to make conscious choice that would take me away from my fate. Of this, self-observation is one of the most important tools. And usually we do self-observation kind of narrow. You know, it's like, what today can I observe about myself? But this requires that you look at your whole life. Think about that. What if you sat down and looked at your life and asked the question, where is this taking me? This is not rhetorical. Take a moment, look at your life, and extrapolate in as objective a way as possible where your life is taking you. Don't expect to get a whole answer at this point. It takes, in my experience, a little while. And ask yourself if that's what you want.
Okay,
Go
I'll
ahead.
I'll chime in again. One of the things that I think is interesting about what's happened since I discovered this group is that back in the very early days, I had been pondering, shall we say, for several months, do I want to be doing what I'm doing now for the next 10 years or so, let's say? Um, and it was something I was really stuck on. And yet now, I not much has changed in my outer life, but I'm very much at peace with how things are. And I think it's because just by being part of this group, I've things have really developed for me internally, which I am extremely grateful for, by the way. Thank you.
Just remember, if you get anything good out of this, it's your own fault.
Yeah, I won't blame you for it.
Yeah, as Granny Weatherwax says, I can't be going around making people's lives better at my time of life.
That sounds like Terry Pratchett.
It is
Yep.
Terry Pratchett.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm convinced that Terry Pratchett is was a emanation of the bodhisattva of humor, taught enlightenment through laughs. But that's just me. Alka, what are you thinking? You know all about this karma stuff.
I'm Indian. That word is Indian. It's an equal struggle. But just like right now, Noor was talking about, I I had a similar event in my life. I'm not sure I was conscious about it. I think I was just lucky. I remember one day I was at work and I was getting all these rewards for doing almost nothing. It was like bizarre. They were giving me compliments for using or money for using maybe 1% of my brain. It started getting boring. And I realized looking at myself and saying, if I am going to be here for next 30 years, will I be happy? And the answer that came to me was no. You will have no friends. You will have all the money in the world. You will have really bad health. And when I'm saying this next sentence, I don't mean it in a, I want to be the sexiest 96-year-old woman in my life. But when I'm
Can you
saying
achieve
sexiest,
this?
I don't say, thank you. Um, when I'm saying that, I don't mean as in looks, but as in energy, as
Yeah.
in wanting to learn more, as in cool person, right? And I'm gonna. This Terry guy seems very interesting, like enlightening through humor. Oh my God, I wish I can be like that. So and I don't know why it from that point I went from faith to destiny. But I really took that very seriously. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I don't want to be here. And it's going to take me next 30, 40 years to be that person at 96. Like I have all the money now because I've worked on it for 30 years, right? But if I continue doing this, then I'll only have money, but I'll not be fun person because I'm going to know only IT. That's it, nothing else. So I'm so glad I changed, not me, but something in me changed my path from faith to destiny. And I have not regretted, even for a single moment, my decision. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. I have no money coming in except spending, no friends that I know, no BMWs, no house behind the Capitol. Well, I do still have the house behind Capitol, but at the same time, I have never been more happier in my life.
That's important.
Thank you, Alka. Yeah. I mean, that's a huge shift. Ian's is subtle, and Alka, yours is, more obvious. Yeah, both of those things have power to them.
Yeah, but I knew somehow intellectually it's going to take me years to be a better human being. I was not a good human being. That being part, right? I was a good human. But somehow intellectually I knew. And it's a lot of work. It's not easy.
Amen to that.
I get humbled every time. Like I was harsh just a few minutes ago. You know that. I'm still learning.
So we're always subject towards these accidental things. And when elements of fate come up, you either fall prey to them or you stay conscious and make choices. Here's the thing. When you are subject to your fate, you have no free will. You will think you have free will because that's the comforting lie you need to tell yourself to remain more or less sane under the circumstances. But it's nothing more than a comforting lie. You are predictable. And this is the thing. Any good teacher is going to look at you and say, "Oh, I see where your life is going." And if you're unlucky, they'll tell you. If you're lucky, they'll just show you how to get out of it.
Yeah. What's, we're talking about that in the context of the work, but
Yes.
now that I have moved my way through my pain management program and I'm looking back in retrospect, this is what the doctors are trying to express to the people dealing with chronic pain who go through the program. Many of them end up in this program because they're in that place where maybe they're getting referrals from their primary care physicians or from their rheumatologist or whatever. A person who's like, you have the power to bring yourself some ease, some relief, some grace, if you only knew that that were possible. And in this program, you have these physicians who specialize in helping people you not escape their pain, but learn how to act in a way to live in a way that allows them to take charge of their experience, including their experience of pain. And for them, it's subtle, it's practical. Well, sometimes it's not subtle at all. Sometimes people have these incredible journeys of finding pain relief just by realizing that there are certain things that are within their control, whether that's diet, sleep hygiene, um, seeking more peace and relaxation, or getting out of the house more, whatever that might be for them. As soon as they realize that it is within their power to create change in their own lives, it changes so much for them. And it's pretty beautiful to witness someone going from frustration and angst and despair over their physical state to a sense of fulfillment and hope and being able to look forward to perhaps less pain, but certainly more empowerment and more self-awareness about how they contribute to or diminish their own experience. And so we're doing the same thing here. And there are many avenues through which we can put this idea of moving between fate and into destiny into practice. Osama.
Um, that decision to move from fate to destiny, right? For somebody like, a person that you're, from maybe from your own experience, Noor, or,
Mhm.
our experiences, like just making that choice and making that decision itself to say, this is what I want. Like Alka said, I'm not happy here. Boom. This is going to change. Even though the circumstances externally might be, um, maybe there's more challenge. Like the bitterness in the route of destiny, in the path of destiny, is sweetness, while the sweetness in fate is bitterness, because it's not the heart is not in alignment something is off. And even within that fate, walking on that fate, something internally is saying, nah, something's not working. Something is off. But making that decision, making that choice consciously, and not a half, 1 foot here, 1 foot there. It's kind of like bouncing forth. Sometimes it's fate, sometimes it's destiny, da, 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 that lie that Mushtaq mentioned, lying to ourselves, in that free will. And going with that power. I was talking to a friend of mine this evening about choosing to live as an artist. Like, what does that mean for for somebody to say, okay, I choose this is this is what I want to do, even though the mind or the practicality of living is so challenging. It says like, well, finances might not be as as a regular stable 9 to 5 job. Um, Life may look different, the comfort may look different, all of these things. But internally, from experience, when the heart says that's it. If it keeps pointing to destiny, um, so that's yeah, that point of that decision, that changing point. Um, I wonder that the himma, I wonder the that power, that spark in order to say, you know what, I'm gonna go to that pain management uh, program, not just as a referral,
But
but
to be a participant,
to be a
yeah.
participant. I'm gonna make this decision, and that's it. It no longer it's laser focused. That I don't know. Wait, what is himma? What is that? That power that's required um to make that choice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's one of the toughest parts of this is we often talk about, being able to, well, I use the metaphor of plugging the leaks, right? And this is like an extension of that because we do need to have a certain amount of energy that allows us to have the momentum to make big changes in our lives and to be able to handle the rough ride that might follow having committed to those choices. So that's why we do all these things like practicing breath work and doing the practical things, the practical things that build us up and make it possible for us to do more. And of course, for those of us who are into doing zikr or prayer and anything of that nature, all of those things can contribute to building up our strength in order to take action on the things that we've come to see and cannot unsee about ourselves and the currents of fate that are carrying us along.
Is it the same hey rather than a hey?
uh, it's a ha as in
Oh,
who.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, though this word has an interesting meaning too, which
I think him is how is it translated? Like, I think maybe
yeah,
power.
the first can translate as power and protection. Um, Hima translates as ambition, zeal, or spiritual aspiration,
I
according to
think
my Arabic
any and
dictionary.
any and all of that seems appropriate. Seems like a fit, at least to me.
Yeah, the two words fit together, though they have completely different initial letters.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because Shima uh, means protection or a protected area. But uh, yeah,
Maybe. Uh,
Hema with the two M's is a strong drive or motivation, deep-seated desire to achieve something,
okay.
especially in the Sufi context of achieving all the stuff that we're talking about. But that's a
Excellent.
really good and interesting distinction. So I'm going to save that and contemplate it for a few years.
Thank you, Osama. Ah, Alka.
Sorry. Uh, just building on what Osama said, I was not unhappy at all. I was actually very happy. I was at my high when this occurred to me. And since he keeps saying, what is that? What is that force? I'm just thinking now, maybe that's the third force that I was blind to, but I was still lucky. Um, and that's the third force, the missing third force.
Yeah, and we haven't even touched on that much.
Not yet.
But
Not yet.
yeah, because generally people leave when they're unhappy or something. I left on my high, and that's what I'm now thinking. Wow, I guess I got the lottery or something. But great accident.
Yeah, that's a good point that I think we have this stereotype that the thing that motivates us is always like hitting rock bottom and being miserable. And for many situations that can be true. For many people, sometimes that's what gets them going. But for other, cases and circumstances, sometimes it's one thing that's like there's just some kind of entering shock, as we like to say, that triggers some kind of realization that
I
causes us to
just,
aspire to something different, right?
yeah, I just knew I'm happy where I am, but I'm not my sexiest. Sorry, again, using
Only getting sexier, Olga. Yeah, I can totally see that for you. I'm excited. All right. James says the best time to leave a party is at its peak.
True.
I don't know. I try to help and clean up after, but to each their own. All right. So, where do we want to go next from here,
We want to
Michelle?
think about the idea that fate imposes limitations.
Ah, yes. I mean, speaking of like pain and disability,
Yeah.
hell yeah, limitations.
And destiny is in many ways overcoming those limitations to go in a direction that is more fulfilling to you.
Mhm.
And not fulfilling in the sense of I get all the chocolate cake I want, but fulfilling in the sense of actually being able to develop.
Yeah, or in the case of getting all the chocolate you want, being absolutely 100% pain-free 24/7. I want to use that because I feel like that's a really relatable thing for many people. It's a tangible in a sense. So that's not the goal. It's just that accessibility to more than what has been, that access to more than what has been. I don't know, Mushtaq, are you trying to get all the chocolate?
I already have all the chocolate.
Everything you need is already within you, Mushtaq.
Some of it I still got to put in me. Some of it's over on the counter there.
Okay, so
So what do you do? That's the big
yeah,
question.
what do you do? It's a very important question.
You take careful account of your life. You see if your life is going in the direction that you want it to. At your last breath, when you look back, are you going to go, damn, that was fun? Or are you going to go, shit, I missed out?
Coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah. Are you going to go, I have achieved the state of consciousness that will allow me to do what I need to do? Or are you going to just go, well, I've been entirely mechanical my whole life? And if you decide that you want to move into your destiny, it's very simple. First, take account of your life. See where your fate will take you. Be honest with yourself. You don't have to tell anybody else. Nobody else cares. I don't care, nor doesn't care. Maybe Alka cares. I don't know. She might care. But mostly we don't care. It's you that needs to care. And if you are not happy where your fate is taking you, then you have to find the third force that will allow you to move from fate to destiny. That third force will also keep you in your destiny because it is really easy to fall back into your fate. You have so much inertia in your fate that a moment's inattention and you can be back in it.
Which will happen.
Which will happen.
It
Yeah.
will happen.
And then you drag your ass back out, sometimes kicking and screaming. And there are all sorts of practices that you can use. Just go to our playlist on practices. You'll find virtually everything that you need that you can do on your own in that playlist. If you need more, call us or don't. Where does it start? Can anybody guess what I'm going to tell you where it starts is? Yes, Alka knows.
Breath.
Yes, breathe
Yeah.
consciously.
Rat says breathing too. Yeah.
That's where it starts. Breath is the interface between the body and the mind, between the mind and the spirit, between all of that. It's your main interface. Use it. I mean, I suppose you could get an expensive biofeedback machine and learn to control your heart rate, something like that, your blood pressure, galvanic skin response, any of that stuff. Breath is a lot easier and a lot cheaper. You need
Well,
nothing for that.
I'll tell you, they use breath work in the pain management program. So there's something
Do
to
you know
that.
why they use breath work?
Well,
Because it
because
works.
because it helps integrate what we perceive to be the separation between, yeah, the
Yeah.
physical and the immaterial. And that allows people to heal inside and out. And not just heal, but thrive.
Yeah. So take account, see where you're going, see if you're happy with that. If you're not happy with it, change it. Simple, not easy, but simple. So, who haven't we heard from? That's your cue, Noor.
All right. Jill, do you have any thoughts or questions you might
Or answers.
like to share? Or answers? Yeah.
Oh my. Hmm.
If you like, we can come back to you.
Come back.
All
Come
right.
back. Thank you.
James, yes, go for it.
The necessity of strategically marshaling your forces for this has sort of been driven home to me over the last few weeks,
Mm.
where chest infection, severe coughing, sleep pattern all over the place, and my attempts to stay awake definitely become less efficient, far more challenging. And when I feel myself going backwards, I then feel my condition fake quite strongly. It often comes to mind. I can see that it's still there. And that inertia is still there, waiting to spring out at me. Um, so really, focusing on the basics and breathing for a start, which has been interesting. Uh, it just makes it very, very clear. It removes too much naivety. You can't just think, "Oh, I'm awake now. It's all going to be cool," because I'm telling myself I'm awake. Da 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 da. Uh, whereas my conditioning and its ability to direct me unconsciously and consciously is still very much there. Um, it's clarifying. So, the work is not over. Surprise, surprise.
No. And you know what? When we're not feeling well,
Mm.
I think that's where grace comes in, where we're like, you know what? My condition, my conditioning is not at its peak right now, right? So,
Mm. Though, any more on that? That's going to involve a little chat with you and Mushtaq about something that may be a development or it may
yeah,
be a bypass, but that's for another time.
anytime you're ready, man. Amelia, how about you? Got any thoughts, wisdom, questions?
Um, well, I mean, almost exactly a year ago, I did something similar to you. I moved out to California,
Mm.
partially spontaneously, and it seemed to have been, it seems to have been a great change so far. But I don't know. I just feel like there's even more. It's like it worked so well the first time. I kind of want to change again.
There is that, it is tempting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's a great thing to do, especially when you're young.
That's the time for it, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that's something to, I would imagine you give time to, you feel out. Yeah. I'm glad it's been good so far, though.
Yeah.
Anything else you'd like to add? Not, no pressure, but I figured I'd give
Yeah.
you the opportunity.
I mean, yeah. There's definitely, I want to work on art and stuff.
Mm.
I think if there's a big change, it'll probably be orienting myself towards manifesting that. Um, but then there's a lot of complications you incur with that kind of goal.
Yeah.
Osama's cracking up because
Yeah, remember that for most people, starving artist is all one word.
yeah. Well, the
Doesn't
story
have to be, but
unfolds.
it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah, because you've lived the artist life quite a bit, haven't you, Mushtaq?
Yeah, I supported myself entirely off of my art for several years,
Yep. Yep.
and it was great fun.
Hmm. Yep. Creating, pursuing excellence, all of that stuff. Yeah.
And experimenting with new media and old media, finding places that would actually sell my art for what it was worth.
Mm,
That's the interesting part.
the Holy Grail.
All right, Jill looks like she has figured it all out, so let's see what she has to say.
Thanks, Amelia.
Yes, I figured it all out. All. Yeah. Um, I've been stuck with so much inertia, for about 22 months since the death of my husband, my mate, my person. And so this deal, when the intersection of a choice of retirement, because it was the better thing to do when he was sick and I was caring for him full time. Um, and then I don't know who that person was to be able to go back to that. And so there is such a, I don't know who I am, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm waiting for it, and I'm wanting to, in the inertia, be doing things I should be doing in normal life, but sometimes not able to. And now I'm really at a point where I can see holding the very deep grief and being able to accomplish things at the same time, which is very different than it's been for a long time. And so, but previous to this, there would be such deep, heavy inertia that I would try to be figuring it out and looking for that third way. And sometimes it would happen like a wind at my back, and I had the energy to do taxes that were imminent or things like that. And other times it would show up like a cloud of a big black tornado that was like the overwhelm of trying to think of everything at the same time. But yet this gave me mercy to say, just, be with the grief and move through it. This is where you are. And then this wind at my back would be this other influence that was its own mercy of, oh, I can really get something done. But anyway, it's some kind of a tip to the third force showing up, and I don't know how to find it. It seems like
Yep,
that it just comes when it comes.
that makes sense. Sometimes it's just a matter of paying attention to make sure that you notice when it shows up.
Mm.
It could be sneaking up on you right now.
It may very well be. I mean, it sounds like, this past almost 2 years for you has been a process in itself, right?
Yeah. I've been
And
trying to do it with open eyes,
hmm
and yet there's a lot of very humanness in it that's
Yeah.
fucking
Yeah.
hard.
It's one of the most intense things that you can have happen. Of all of the things that you can have happen to you, losing your mate is one of the most profound, and not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah.
It has thoughts.
Thank you, Jill. And I hope that you continue to hang in there because at least as I see it, it's a painful process, but it is a process. And that implies there is forward momentum. Grief itself, even grief itself can be part of that and is part of that. So,
yeah, sometimes it didn't look like forward momentum, but it's like that.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Third force would show up, and yes, I can see it now.
And this is also a reminder that you don't have to go through this entirely on your own. You can hang out with a bunch of weirdos.
I found you. Thank you. Thank you. I found you.
Yeah, it doesn't get much weirder than us.
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
So,
Ian.
and I will mention to Rat that if you have something to say,
Yes, I
start
meant to say
typing
that as
now.
well. Yes, please take time to share with us any of your thoughts in the chat, Rat.
All right, Ian, talk to us.
Yeah, one of the things I wanted to throw in about that is that in the mid-90s, I was going through a challenging period, and I ended up, well, one of the things I spent a lot of time on was reading the Bhagavad Gita. And the one thing I particularly remember from that is Krishna saying something like, even in your darkest hour, I will always be with you. And I've been trying to find that particular phrase in online translations of the Gita, and it doesn't seem to be there. Although I have gotten responses that sort of suggest that it's a valid statement.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I know what you're talking about. I'll look around for it too, because I'm sure it's there.
yeah, I mean, it's the one thing I particularly remember from that period, and it's stuck with me as being just a really helpful thought.
Thanks, Ian. Uh, Osama says, well, Rat lets us know that Rat is happy to just listen tonight. Thank you. And we are happy to have you. Osama says, the images that you painted while describing your journey, Jill, are so powerful. Thank you. Yeah. Alka.
I realized that somewhere along my way, I was very young. I can't even remember exactly what age. Definitely in my teens, when I saw this saying somewhere in a movie. I'll say it in Hindi and let it be a mantra for anybody who understands Hindi. Is मैंने हर हाल में जीने की कसम खाई है आसमां वाले बता तेरा इरादा क्या है, which if you loosely translate, it was one of those motivational line for me, and I don't know when, how. It was very mechanical. It just literally became my mantra. Anytime, any challenge or anything that would happen, I would say to the sky. So whoever is living in the sky, Asma, in the sky, I have decided to survive. You show, challenge me, give me your challenge. Whatever is your challenge, I will survive. And not knowingly, it was very mechanical for me. It used to be my mantra, and that is something I want to just throw out. Didn't realize it. This conversations made me realize it was the force, or call of the force.
Use the force, Alka. You are one with the force. And the force is with you.
May the force be with you.
Yeah.
Or if you're watching Spaceballs, it's May the Farce be with you.
Oh yes. I need to rewatch that. It's been
Everybody should rewatch that.
absurdly long since I saw
I
it.
thought it was the Schwartz.
The Schwartz.
Wasn't that in Spaceballs with the Schwartz?
That's Spaceballs, yeah.
Yeah. I think there was a farce in there somewhere.
I think there was a lot of farce in there, but yeah.
All right. Well, that's everybody. I'm hungry.
So am I actually, now
Let's
that you
switch
mention it.
over to
Brady Bunch
Brady Bunch
mode.
mode. Voila. Here we are.
Thank you so much, everyone. This is, one of those weird esoteric topics that actually kind of goes against the grain of a lot of culturally ingrained understandings of fate. So if you have questions about that, you can always chime in the comments or reach out to us for one-on-ones, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Or if you have suggestions of how you managed to step from one to the other, tell us in
Yeah,
the comments. We'd love to hear it.
amen.
There are more ways to do this than we know. So
Mhm.
help us out.
Yep. We can inspire each other that way.
Yeah.
All right, then. So, here in Brady Bunch mode, seeing all of your beautiful faces before we say goodbye. Thank you for being here. And I guess we can wave to each other and everyone watching on
Bye,
the
folks.
replay. Rat waves too. We'll see you next week. Bye.